Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Within the city, thank you, senior sister. Even though Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong had overdrafted their soul power, there wasn't anything wrong with their physical bodies. They respectfully bowed towards Ma Xiaodao, their eyes full of admiration. Ma Xiaodao waved them off. You don't need to thank me. These fellas must have been tired of living. To think they'd dare to cause a ruckus in our Shrek Academy. Have you offended anyone recently? No. The moment Hui Yuhao said this, however, he suddenly thought of something, and immediately turned towards Wang Dong. Wang Dong was also looking at him. Both of them felt a sense of chilliness in their hearts when their gazes met. There was only a single person that they could have offended recently, Dai Huabin. Dai Huabin had lost to them twice in a row, which had resulted in him having to kowtow to them. He was from the White Tiger Duke's mansion, and was therefore capable of mobilizing several people to serve him. A Soul Emperor and 5 Soul Kings weren't forces that ordinary powers would possess. Before Hui Yuhao could even speak, Bei Bei walked up to him. 2 junior brothers, this place isn't safe. Let's head back to the academy before we continue this conversation. In reality, there was no way they could be in danger anymore. Hui Yuhao's distress signal had directly summoned the top powers of Shrek Academy. After a brief moment, even Fan Yu arrived. There was no doubt that Hui Yuhao's distress signal had been given to him by Fan Yu, who'd added something special to the signal flare so that he'd also know to immediately rush over the moment Hui Yuhao released it. Because of this, even though only Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong had originally gone to the auction, their returning party turned was much larger. The corpses left behind were all taken away by Yang Xiaozhe's men. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong weren't able to sleep well that night. They were only allowed to return to their dorms early in the morning after the academy's unceasing interrogation. Although the academy hadn't given them a definite answer, they clearly had their own conjectures. Hui Yuhao wasn't worried about how the academy would deal with this matter. He and Wang Dong had truly been too careless this time. They'd never thought that Dai Huabin would use a tactic like this in an area so close to Shrek Academy. The corpses gave them no leads. They had indeed been sent over by Dai Huabin, but they'd wiped away all traces of their identities before going to ambush Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong. This wasn't done just to avoid anything troublesome for Dai Huabin, but also to prevent any suspicion falling upon the White Tiger Duke's mansion. The next morning, Dai Huabin's expression greatly changed when he saw the somewhat dispirited Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong come to class, but he was still a son of the White Tiger Duke. Though he was greatly astonished, he quickly masked any overt changes on his face. He hadn't received any information as to what had occurred last night, and had hoped that the final outcome wouldn't be too messy. As long as his men hadn't been injured, all would be fine. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to explain himself to his father. Cold sweat imperceptibly began to drench the back of Dai Huabin's shirt. A Soul Emperor and 5 Soul Kings together were not enough to kill the 2 of them. Remorse began to blossom in the depths of his heart. Dai Huabin. Hui Yuhao's eyesight was extremely good, and thus he was able to instantly see Dai Huabin, who had been staring at them with a bewildered look in his eyes. He then pulled Wang Dong along with him and took large strides towards him. Dai Huabin's face was somewhat pale. At the end of the day, he was only a youth around the age of 10, and thus couldn't conceal his emotions very well. Wang Dong's eyes turned cold as he saw Dai Huabin, and was just about to charge straight towards him when Hui Yuhao hurriedly held onto him. What do you want? Dai Huabin asked coldly. Dai Huabin gritted his teeth, and clenched his fists tightly, making the veins on his forehead pop out. Zhulu walked out from class 2 and stood in front of Dai Huabin as she yelled, Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong, don't be too excessive. Wang Dong replied icily, we're being excessive. Go ask him what he did last night. I'm just not sure whether or not he'll have the guts to reveal what he did. Dai Huabin gritted his teeth as he responded, I don't know what you're talking about. Wang Dong snorted disdainfully. I knew you were a scaredy cat. Regardless of whether or not you admit to what you did. You have to kowtow towards us now since you lost, man up and admit your loss. The advancement test had already ended, and every single person who could continue going to class had passed it. Students who hadn't passed could retake the test 3 days later, but they would be forced to leave the academy if they failed that test too. The class that Wang Yang and Ju Yi taught, Class 1, had an astonishing 95% pass rate. The facts had shown that putting the two of them together was extremely effective. Ju Yi could manage her students well, while Wang Yang had a vast amount of knowledge and a warm teaching style. Combined with the truly outstanding batch of students that came this year, there were only a few people who weren't able to pass the advancement test. Moreover, they still had the chance to retake the exam. Comparatively, there were far more students from the other classes who had been eliminated. Yu Hao, why didn't you let me settle my grudges with him? Wang Dong asked Hu Yuhao furiously. Hu Yuhao subconsciously followed his gaze to see a red-clothed Ma Xiaodao standing outside the classroom and waving to him. Ma Xiaodao's physical state didn't seem right. Her charming face was flushed red, and there was even a faint red light shining from her body. Hu Yuhao questioningly pointed towards himself, and Ma Xiaodao nodded before turning around and leaving. There was still some time before class began, so Hu Yuhao hurriedly turned towards Wang Dong. If I come back late, help me out. I'm going to see why senior sister Xiaotao's looking for me. Oh? Wang Dong also felt that something about Ma Xiaodao wasn't quite right. If this was before yesterday, he definitely wouldn't have allowed Hu Yuhao to go alone. However, he wasn't wary towards Ma Xiaodao since she had saved them yesterday. Hu Yuhao quickly left the class. The moment he walked out of the door, he felt a wave of red light surge towards him. Regardless of how precise his spiritual detection was, he wasn't able to dodge it at all. A wave of heat immediately engulfed his entire body. The source of that heat was Ma Xiaotao's body. The 20-or-so-year-old Ma Xiaodao was at the most beautiful period of her life, and she was also extremely beautiful from the start. At this moment, her flushed cheeks made her even more of a radiant beauty. She let out a sweet moan as she hugged Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao, I can't hold it anymore. Quickly. Her voice was relatively loud, and not only did the students who were passing by hear her, but even the students from Class 1 did as well. Furthermore, Hu Yuhao was currently in front of the classroom door. As he was hugged by the fiery Ma Xiaodao, it was absolutely impossible for him to struggle free. A red light flickered and Ma Xiaodao suddenly accelerated and disappeared from the end of the corridor with Hu Yuhao in tow. Wang Dong immediately felt that something was off. He hastily ran outside, but he could only see the back of Ma Xiaotao's body by the time he got there. There were still a few students in the corridor who were looking at each other. Wang Dong's expression became pale. He was just about to chase after them, but an arm suddenly stopped him the moment he took a step forward. Wang Dong flew into a rage. However, he was immediately sent into a daze when he turned around. The person who'd grabbed him was Ju Yi. What's the matter? Why are you being so impatient? Ju Yi spoke in a low voice. Though she liked the two of them, in accordance with her philosophy of teaching, she definitely wouldn't allow her students to go against her. Wang Dong said urgently, Teacher Ju, Hu Yuhao has been taken away by Ma Xiaodao. Please go rescue him quickly. I feel that there's something wrong with her. In the event he's harmed by her, Ju Yi pulled him back to the classroom. Don't worry. Nothing will happen. Dean Yang has already notified me of this. Ma Xiaotao's martial soul is rather special, and Yu Hao's second martial soul can help her cultivation. Furthermore, this will be somewhat useful for him. Go back to your seat, we're about to start class. With that, Ju Yi shut the door to the classroom. Wang Dong's sense of urgency didn't subside as a result of Ju Yi's explanation. On the contrary, it became even more intense. He naturally knew that Hu Yuhao wouldn't be injured by Ma Xiaodao, but the worry he felt intensified exponentially when he saw the image of Ma Xiaodao hugging Hu Yuhao in his mind. At that moment, Hu Yuhao's mind was blank. He naturally knew that Ma Xiaodao wouldn't hurt him, and moreover, he had seen her berserk appearance before. Only, he was somewhat embarrassed due to the big beauty hugging him out of the blue. Ma Xiaodao didn't have any perfume on her, but she nonetheless smelled rather refreshing. She smelled like sun-dried blankets, relaxing and clean. Unfortunately, she wasn't warm like a blanket, but somewhat scalding instead. Ma Xiaodao was extremely slender, and she continued to run as she hugged Hu Yuhao. The latter only saw the scenery around him alternating unceasingly, while the blank feeling he felt in his heart only grew stronger. Within the blink of an eye, they'd left the school building. Ma Xiaodao rushed towards Sea God's Lake with Hui Yuhao in tow, where she finally took a breather. Yuhao, quickly help me. I can't hold it anymore, I need your ice element, help me suppress my evil fire quickly, she stammered. Yuhao, are you alright? Ma Xiaodao didn't do anything to you, right? Wang Dong ran over to him and questioned him impatiently. Hui Yuhao kept a natural expression on his face as he replied, I'm alright. In fact, I'm doing quite well. I simply accompanied senior sister Xiaodao to cultivate. You should know just how extraordinary the nature of her martial soul is. With my help, she's managed to suppress that demonic fire of hers. When he'd left the Sea God's Island and returned to the lakeside, he'd firmly made up his mind, no matter who it was that questioned him, he wouldn't say what had really happened, even if he was beaten to death. It was too embarrassing. Wang Dong gazed at him and felt a bit apprehensive. His nose twitched and he asked, what's that fragrance? Wang Dong immediately became excited when he mentioned the golden light left arm bone, and nodded repeatedly as he said, yep, it's already arrived. Can you protect me tonight so that I can fuse with it? I've already gotten permission from teacher Ju for a leave of absence. It won't be a problem even if it takes me more than a day to fuse with the soul bone. Hui Yuhao nodded and replied, then I'll ask teacher Fan Yu for some materials tonight, so that I can remodel my soul tool in our dorm room while I'm watching over you. Once he'd finished his breakfast, Hui Yuhao returned to the dormitory to freshen up. Afterwards, he changed into a new school uniform before heading off to find Ju Yi with Wang Dong. It was still both extremely sunny and cloudless today. Moreover, a new school term had begun in Shrek Academy. Students from every year group were all facing different levels of pressure. The new students had the freshman examination, while students from higher year groups had both their advancement examination and courses to study for. Hui Yuhao lightly knocked on the office door a few times, enter. Ju Yi's ever ice-cold voice rang out. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong pushed open the door and entered. The room was already full of core disciples from Class 1. Besides Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong, Xiao Xiao, Lan Susu, Lan Luo Luo, Chao Jinxian and Huang Chutian, who had officially become a core disciple, were all present in the room. As such, there were a total of 8 people from their class present. Ju Yi intentionally glanced towards Hui Yuhao. When she saw that his expression was normal, she didn't ask any questions. With a cough, she directed everyone's line of sight towards herself. The reason I called you guys here today is because I have a special situation that I need to inform you guys about. In 3 days' time, the outer courtyard will be organizing a core disciple qualification match. Originally, it didn't have anything to do with second years, but the academy suddenly decided to let the year 2 core disciples participate in the match as well. As a result of this, you guys will need to prepare yourselves. Feeling somewhat curious, Ju Sikhen asked, Teacher Ju, what's this qualification match for? Hearing Ju Yi speak, as though she didn't think of the matter as very important, everyone immediately heaved a sigh of relief. They'd even silently cursed at the academy in their hearts for having a bit too many examinations. The advancement examination had just ended. What was the deal with the core disciple examination now? All right, you guys head back to the classroom first. Hui Yuhao, stay behind for a while. The rest of you can head back first. Yes. Everyone uniformly replied. As they left, Ju Sikhen shot Hui Yuhao a glance that said that he was rejoicing in his demise. Afterwards, he took the lead and left the office with Cao Jinxian. Wang Dong said in a low tone, Xiao Xiao, and I will wait for you outside. Once the others had left the room, Hui Yuhao obediently closed the door. He then turned around and faced Ju Yi as he asked, Teacher Ju, do you still have something to tell me? Ju Yi indifferently replied, I'm only relaying a message from Dean Yang and Dean Xian. Both of them mentioned that it would be fine, even if the others don't enter the top 7. However, they said that if you fail to do so, you'll suffer the consequences. Hui Yuhao immediately became crestfallen. Even though he felt confident about his abilities, that still depended on the circumstances. He'd be competing against a bunch of senior core disciples. How could it be that easy? Disregarding the other students, Bei Bei, Shu Sansha and Jiang Nan Nan alone were bound to be within the 15-year-old category, along with the many core disciples he'd never seen before. All three of them had 4 soul rings. He definitely didn't think that he could fight against his seniors with 4 soul rings, even if he did have an ultimate martial soul. Once he left the room, he noticed Wang Dong and Xiao Xiao waiting for him. "Why did Teacher Zhu ask you to stay behind?" Wang Dong asked curiously. This wasn't something that he could hide, thus Hu Yuhao told them what Zhu Yi had told him with a depressed look on his face. By the time he'd finished, Wang Dong and Xiao Xiao couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. They then simultaneously patted him on the shoulder. "You'd best rely on yourself, rather than on us." Hu Yuhao was full of lament and resentfulness as he replied, "Are you guys even human? You're not even comforting me." Wang Dong laughed mischievously and said, "Who asked you to become a core disciple of 2 departments? Who asked you to show such an outstanding performance in the advancement examination, and to even have an ultimate martial soul? We'll cheer for you." "Oh right, I keep forgetting to ask you. What was the skill you used the other day called? The one that sucked all of our soul power away, and released that dark green light." Based on Hu Yuhao's current cultivation, it was still extremely difficult for him to properly use the domain of perpetual ice. He'd still only been able to use a fraction of the skill, despite having borrowed Wang Dong's power that day. If he wanted to fully unleash the potential of this soul skill, he'd have to wait until he'd managed to obtain 7 soul rings at the very least. When the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion had been known as the tyrant of the extreme north, her domain of perpetual ice could freeze over 1,000 miles in an instant. As such, it was one of the highest-ranked origin skills. If Hu Yuhao wanted to use the skill at the same level that the Ice Empress had, he'd have to cultivate to the stage that she had been at. Hu Yuhao was immersed in his anxiety the entire day, during his classes, after consulting with the professors, and receiving some pointers from Fan Yu. Hu Yuhao started to create a Class 2 soul tool that would suit him. He had only 3 days to improve his equipment. For the sake of saving time, as soon as he finished his class, he decided to bring all the parts back to the dormitory. He was planning to assemble his soul tool while acting as a protector for Wang Dong, who would absorb the soul bone from the auction in the meantime. As soon as he opened the dormitory door, he was welcomed by a burst of warm and comfortable golden light that almost made him jump out of his skin. He quickly closed the door behind him. In the middle of their dorm room, Wang Dong was earnestly inspecting the golden light left arm bone, which was hovering in mid-air. He seemed completely engrossed by it and didn't even spare any attention to Hu Yuhao's return. Hu Yuhao sat beside him and also carefully observed the bone. Without the barrier of the stall, one could completely experience the awesomeness of this bone just by being near it. It hadn't been priced at 9.5 million gold soul coins for nothing. It looked like an artificial sun as it hovered in the middle of the room. Its warmth-filled light had spread to every corner of the room and dispersed every shadow from every corner and nook. Apart from its warmth, the golden halo also radiated a faint pressure. The most eye-catching parts were the fingertips. There was a pulsating strange reddish-gold light surrounding them, which was continuously emitting a sharp kai-kai sound. Immediately, Wang Dong's entire body was covered with the shining reddish-gold light. A rich, dense aura of warmth rose and surged about while Wang Dong exhaled deeply. Following which, he closed his eyes and stood there calmly, enjoying the fusion. At this point in the fusion process, the Haodong power was irrelevant. Therefore, Hu Yuhao slowly stopped pouring his soul power into him. After stepping around in front of Wang Dong, he looked at his satisfied face and felt that it was somewhat unfair. They had both fused with a soul bone. But why was the difference so big, idiot? This is called compatibility. This soul bone has a very high compatibility with his body. Therefore, the fusion will also be very simple and quick. On the other hand, what was your cultivation level when you merged with me? Moreover, I was still alive when we combined. It's already a miracle that you succeeded at all. The Ice Impress said in a dissatisfied manner. Hu Yuhao was startled. Ice Impress. Sky Dream. Where did the two of you go? Didn't you hear me when I was calling you earlier? Why did the two of you keep ignoring me? Be it when he and Wang Dong were in danger, or when he was in that awkward situation with Ma Xiaodao, these two intelligent soul rings had acted as if they didn't exist. Although Hui Yuhao had already left them very satisfied, nonetheless the Sky Dream Iceworm and the Ice Empress knew that he would have to do way better if he wanted to become stronger and shock even them. Hui Yuhao hadn't really blamed them for their actions. Therefore, he immediately said in a somewhat ashamed manner, "I'm sorry. I didn't think that someone would ambush us. I'll be more careful from now on." The Sky Dream Iceworm said, "We have good news for you. You didn't suffer in vain yesterday. Although that girl's phoenix flames weren't very pure, their temperature was still quite good. In addition, the benefits your body received from that 10,000-year whale rubber were greater than what we had imagined." The reddish gold light was accompanied by a dragon's roar as it pushed forwards. Afterwards, a layer of reddish gold flames started to cover his wings. It seemed as if those already beautiful wings now had an additional outer garment, making them look even bigger. The entire room was filled with the aura of the radiant butterfly goddess. It's called Golden Light, and it's an auxiliary type skill. It can be used with any of my soul skills. I'm also unaware of its concrete ability. I'll need to test it out. But it should have the ability to increase the destructive power of my light element. Hui Yuhao's eyes lit up. This soul bone skill can give you an overall power-up. I think I've heard teacher Wang say that an ability like this was very rare. Wang Dong, who was releasing the golden light, had an even more surprised look right now. The restoration rate of my soul power seems to have increased as well. Just like you can feel your soul power slowly reducing when you release your martial soul, right now, I can feel my soul power slowly increasing. Although it's not very clear, I can still feel it. Hui Yuhao grabbed Wang Dong's hand. Their soul power mixed, transforming into Haodong power. Immediately, Hui Yuhao also felt a dense light aura entering Wang Dong's body, slowly helping him recover his soul power. At this time, his soul power was abundant. Therefore, it was difficult to feel the recovering soul power clearly. Hui Yuhao manipulated his soul power and released several skills, such as spiritual detection, spiritual sharing, spiritual shock, and spiritual interference, to consume their Haodong power. This surprise was simply too pleasant for them. Regardless of how much the golden light amplified Wang Dong's offensive capabilities, the simple fact that it could simultaneously restore their soul power was an enormous gain for them. Their combat strength in a prolonged battle would drastically increase now that they had this. Coincidentally, the Sky Dream Iceworm had brought up the issue of his soul power consumption in battle earlier. This is great news. Hui Yuhao cheered, then immediately gave Wang Dong a big hug. Wang Dong was dumbstruck when Hui Yuhao hugged him. His face reddened, but he didn't resist, nor did he hug Hui Yuhao back. Hui Yuhao didn't feel that it was strange at all and smiled mischievously. "Quick, let's cultivate together to see if this golden light has any effect on our cultivation." However, the facts proved that they hadn't been possessed by the god of luck. The golden light was only capable of helping them restore their soul power. It didn't benefit their cultivation whatsoever. Despite this, their excitement didn't diminish in the slightest. The core disciples qualification match would begin in 2 days, thus any increase to Wang Dong's strength would be incredibly helpful. Nobody knew how the core disciples qualification match would be carried out. Despite this, it was inescapable for all of the core disciples. Fortunately, they wouldn't receive a punishment if they lost this match. The class bell rang, signifying that their classes for the day had ended. The students from Class 1 immediately began to relax when they heard the bell. In Shrek Academy, managing to rise to second years from freshman was equivalent to managing to pass through a strict filter. Every single student left was of sufficient strength. When they left the classroom, Hui Yuhao immediately saw Dai Huabin, Xia Huanyue, Zhu Lu, and Wu Feng leaving their class together as well. Their teacher in charge, Mu Jin, led them as they left. Dai Huabin naturally saw Hui Yuhao as well, and a cold light flashed through his eyes when he did. He concealed his own emotions very well however, as he simply looked away from Hui Yuhao as they left. He didn't even spare him a second glance. Dai Huabin was similarly terrified once he realized the consequences of his actions. He couldn't afford to affect his future prospects, just for the sake of some petty revenge. Ning Tian, who hadn't been seen in ages, glanced at Hui Yuhao the moment she came out from Class 3, just like Dai Huabin. The 12 core disciples of Year 2 left the teaching building as they followed the 3 teachers, and headed towards the soul dueling area. Hui Yuhao saw a few familiar faces when they neared the soul dueling area. His senior brother Bei Bei, Shu Sansha, and Jiang Nan Nan appeared in his line of sight. All of them were Year 5 core disciples. The most conspicuous of them were still the twin stars, Bei Bei and Shu Sansha. The core disciples of Year 5 naturally weren't limited to the three of them, but they were the only ones who hadn't had their 15th birthday yet. They were, without a doubt, the strongest amongst the core disciples of the outer courtyard. Advancing from a soul elder to a soul ancestor was much more difficult than advancing from a soul grandmaster to a soul elder. This point alone was enough to demonstrate Dai Huabin's extraordinary talent. He hadn't even turned 13, yet he'd already reached rank 37. He was absolutely at the forefront of Shrek Academy. This was also one of the main reasons the Academy hadn't been willing to give up on him so easily. At that moment, a swaying figure slowly walked towards the soul dueling area. His swaying appearance gave the impression that he could fall down at any time. Hui Yuhao revealed a trace of astonishment on his face when he saw him. Wasn't that Elder Xian? Even though a large portion of his face was covered by his messy hair, the signature calabash of alcohol in his left hand and the chicken leg in his right immediately revealed who he was. Besides Elder Xian, Hui Yuhao had never seen a person within Shrek Academy act like this. Elder Xian unsteadily walked towards the group of students, then raised his head with an intoxicated look in his eyes. Little Wang. Elder Xian. Wang Yang hurriedly stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Is everyone present? Elder Xian asked. Wang Yang replied, everyone's arrived. There are a total of 26 core disciples from the Martial Soul Department between Year 2 and Year 5, while only a single person has come from the Soul Tool Department. Oh? Let's head in then. With that, Elder Xian turned around and wobbled his way into the soul dueling arena. Most of the core disciples had never seen Elder Xian before. Because of this, a large number of them had doubts in their heart. Dai Huabin couldn't help but whisper to Xia Huanyue, who was beside him, who's this drunkard? Xia Huanyue shook his head, but didn't reply. The soul dueling arena looked like it usually did, except for the fact that there were no other teachers or students present. Elder Xian walked all the way to the middle of the area before he stopped. The core disciples also stopped, along with their teachers. The teachers naturally wouldn't disobey Elder Xian's order, thus they left the soul dueling arena one by one. Elder Xian didn't wait for the students within the area to react as he suddenly raised the bottle gourd in his hand and shouted, begin. With a whoosh, Elder Xian's figure vanished, which left only the 27 core disciples of the outer courtyard in the soul dueling arena. The sudden change in events truly happened too fast, thus the students present momentarily paused when they heard Elder Xian's shout. Immediately afterwards, all of them made a different decision. Hui Yuhao's reaction was extremely quick. He immediately stretched his hands out and grabbed both Wang Dong and Xiao Xiao's hands. Afterwards, a light erupted from his back, and he shot towards Bei Bei with the two of them in tow. He Kaitu had followed Fan Yu for a long period of time, as Fan Yu was the who'd brought him to Shrek Academy. The instant that the large number of soul tools appeared all over his body, 2 yellow and 2 purple soul rings rose up from beneath him and simultaneously lit up. Impressively, he'd managed to become a soul ancestor-ranked expert. After all of the metallic tubes had emerged from his body, he Kaitu mercilessly launched a volley of attacks towards the area that held the largest number of people. Over 20 beams of light suddenly emerged from his body towards his target, and the ripples of soul power that instantaneously exploded outwards stunned everyone present. The two of you are eliminated. The smell of alcohol assaulted their noses as Zhu Sikhen and Cao Jinshuans found that, to their astonishment, they were now hovering in the air beside Elder Xian, and a faint halo of light had covered their bodies. A loud explosion then rang out from the ground beneath them. The might of 20 soul tools was simply astonishing. Amidst the violent explosions, everyone other than Zhu Sikhen and Cao Jinshuan, who'd been directly eliminated, hastily dodged to the side. He Kaitu hadn't launched his attack for nothing. In fact, he'd done it for the sake of his little junior brother. If he hadn't, why would his attack have perfectly collided with Zhu Sikhen and Cao Jinshuan? Hui Yuhao made use of Hikaitu's covering fire to smoothly reach Bei Bei's group of 3 with Wang Dong and Xiao Xiao. Senior brother he, this way. Hui Yuhao waved towards Hikaitu once he'd reached Bei Bei, then immediately began to release his powerful auxiliary abilities. Hu Yuhao's eyes lit up with a faint golden color, as his spiritual detection sharing instantly enveloped Wang Dong, Xiao Xiao, Bei Bei, Shu Sansha, Jiang Nan, and He Kai-tu. Of the 6 of them, Shu Sansha and Jiang Nan were the only ones who hadn't experienced Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection before. As such, the 2 of them were immediately astonished when they were enveloped by it. The long hair of the person on the left turned orange, and his body doubled in size. His martial soul turned out to be the king of the beasts, the lion. Immediately afterwards, a pair of enormous palms met Bei Bei's charge. The martial soul of the person on the right was a lance, which turned into a ray of light as it shot towards Bei Bei's chest like a viper. Evidently this wasn't their first time working together. With one person standing in the front and the other person attacking from behind, they were extremely well coordinated. The lance-wielding soul master who was in the back made his move last, but his attack arrived first. His sharp lance shot straight towards Bei Bei's body. Bei Bei wasn't afraid in the slightest as he faced their attacks. He let out a shout, and countless electric serpents surged from his body. They didn't just envelop the 2 soul masters in front of him, they also enveloped the other 4 soul masters behind them. At the same time, the poignant sound of a flute rang out, which caused the speed of everyone that wasn't on Hu Yuhao's team to decrease. Xiao Xiao had chosen to release her 9 phoenix worshipping flute at the most appropriate time. Bei Bei grabbed the sharp lance that was approaching him with his left dragon claw, which created an intense flurry of sparks. He then swept out with his right claw, and sent the 3-ringed assault-type master with the lion martial soul flying. The most important combatant among the 6 soul masters was naturally the one with the lion martial soul. He was in charge of taking on Bei Bei's attacks in order to win some time for his teammates to surround them. However, he didn't think that a group of soul ancestors would be this strong. He'd been sent flying after trying to use just a single soul skill. Moreover, Jiang Nan had shown mercy. Otherwise, she could have easily snapped his neck due to the difference in their power. Despite that, he flew into the air and joined the ranks of people standing next to Elder Xian, after being thrown by Jiang Nan. Shu Sansha chose this moment to make his move. He entered the fray from Bei Bei's other side, and his enormous shield of the Xuanwu turtle suddenly grew in size and simultaneously blocked the skills of 2 agility-type soul masters and a control-type soul master. This was done in order to let Bei Bei focus all his power on attacking. At the same time, the outcome of the battle between the lance-wielding soul elder and Bei Bei was revealed. In front of Bei Bei's thunderous dragon claw, his opponent could only last for 3 seconds before being forced to join his teammate by Elder Xian's side. The soul masters in the rear naturally wouldn't just sit and watch while Bei Bei and the rest continued their onslaught. And out of them, the fiercest team was Dai Huabin's temporary team. The effectiveness of Ning Qian's 7 treasures glazed pagoda revealed itself again. With her support, the strengths of Dai Huabin, Xia Huanyue, Wu Feng, and Zhu Lu were all raised by a single tier. The 4 of them charged simultaneously, shooting towards Hu Yuhao, Wang Dong, and Xiao Xiao like an arrow, with Dai Huabin and Xia Huanyue spearheading the attack, while Wu Feng and Zhu Lu flanked them. Hu Yuhao and the rest were all at the back, while Bei Bei and Jiang Nan were currently fighting. As a result, a hole had naturally formed in the rear of their formation. Hu Yuhao paused, then revealed a brilliant smile towards Dai Huabin and the other people who were charging towards him. Right then, several dozen rays of intense white light shot out to intercept them. With the accurate aim of Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection, every soul ray perfectly intercepted the movements of Dai Huabin and the rest of his team. Even Shu Sansha wasn't confident that he could survive He Kai-tu's all-out barrage of attacks head-on. When facing a soul engineer, a similarly ranked soul master could only do one thing, that was, to do their best to consume their opponent's soul power in order to have a chance of winning. The instant Bei Bei, Shu Sansha, and Jiang Nan released their attacks, He Kai-tu was already aware of them due to Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection, and had changed his strategy accordingly. Because of this, they weren't worried about the rear of their formation at all. At the very least, for the time being, there was no chance of anybody breaking through the barrage of He Kai-tu's firepower. Naturally, he wasn't omnipotent. With his current cultivation, he didn't dare to rashly release long-range attacks. Otherwise, the drain on his soul power would be too large. A soul engineer who had no soul power was equivalent to a tiger with no fangs. A stationary soul tool was naturally an exception to this, but if Hikaitu actually dared to use one of them in a test, Fan Yu would definitely not forgive him. The people who charged forward felt a slight amount of dizziness flood their minds, and it seemed as though their surroundings had become somewhat illusory. Hui Yuhao had activated his spiritual interference once more. Spiritual interference was absolutely not a useless skill. Although it wasn't especially effective, the slight dizziness caused by it could often change the situation of a battle. Furthermore, the greatest advantage of this skill lay in the fact that the user wouldn't suffer any backlash no matter what. An enormous vertical eye soundlessly appeared at the other end of the orderly line, and began to flash with a dazzling golden light. As the enormous radiant butterfly goddess embraced and fused with the vertical eye, the golden light blossomed outwards. Their attention had been drawn towards the four soul ancestors. Hui Yuhao had relied on this, in addition to Hikaitu's powerful offensive capabilities, in order to lure them into a single line. Then, he and Wang Dong released their powerful fusion skill without any hesitation at all. A golden road amidst withering resplendence. Even the six-ringed Soul Emperor, who tried to kill them the other day, had fallen into his trap. So naturally these core disciples, who hadn't even reached the four-ringed rank, didn't stand a chance. As the 12 golden statues stood there, some of the students with weaker cultivations, such as the Lan sisters and Huang Chutian, began to fall into a critical condition. The astonished elder Xian descended from the air and waved his right hand, causing a pure white ray to envelop the bodies of every frozen student. Every student the ray landed on softly collapsed to the ground one by one. The three-ringed students were comparatively better off, as they were only left in an extremely disheveled state, with their clothes corroded and their martial souls temporarily sealed. A large amount of their soul power had been consumed by the corroding golden road. However, the other two-ringed soul grandmasters had all fainted. If it weren't for Elder Xian reacting in time, there was a chance that their lives would have been at risk. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong never thought that their golden road would be this effective, and were briefly stunned by its effects. Over on the other side, Bei Bei, Shu Sansha, and Jiang Nan Nan had also dealt with their 6 opponents. Impressively, the soul dueling arena was only left with the 7 of them. Dai Huabin was rendered speechless. Ever since he'd lost to Hui Yuhao, Wang Dong, and Xiao Xiao in the finals of the freshman assessment, he felt very unresigned. He'd always felt that he was much stronger than the 3 of them. However, only now did they realize that Du Weiluan's initial evaluation, after blocking both of their fusion skills, had been impartial. The golden road formed by Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong was truly something that their netherworld White Tiger was unable to compare against. Though Dai Huabin didn't understand why this was the case, he still knew that he had thoroughly and completely lost after experiencing the evaporation of half of his soul power. Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong glanced at each other. Other than happiness, what else could they see in each other's eyes? Their cultivations had been steadily rising. Every single one of Hui Yuhao's soul rings had quietly risen to the 4200-year rank, while Wang Dong had obtained the golden light soul bone. When compared to the day they'd been ambushed, their cultivations had increased by another level. Furthermore, the cooldown period between each use of the golden road had decreased to 3 days. Though all of their soul power would be drained with each use of the skill, the recovery ability of the golden light left arm bone was currently helping the 2 of them recover their soul power, as they held hands. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.